You are showing up at a time when America needs you so much.
She was building an yttrium-barium cupric oxide superconductor on this farm.
What you represent to the majority of Americans is somebody with a backbone. And it doesn't matter if you're registered Republican or Democrat.
We say this in Congress, right?
Yeah.
Like, staff is policy. I don't want all the same ideology in my office. You know, you need to have arguments inside the office.
There's 51% of Americans are now registered independents. There's a lot of power now in the independent base.
I don't want the Freedom Caucus to get mad at me, but just because you're in the Freedom Caucus doesn't mean you've got a spine and you will stand up and do the right thing every day.
I'm Nicole Shanahan. Welcome to Back to the People podcast, which highlights the growth of a movement uniting America, where our government is free from corporate capture and where we give voice back to the American public. Congressman Massie, thank you so much for tuning in with us today on Back to the People podcast. I've been a huge fan of yours, what you represent, how you go about it, how you conduct yourself, your history. And I just also wanted to tell you that, you know, when your wife passed, I wanted to reach out and send a note. I hadn't met you yet, but that had massive impact on millions of Americans. And we're all with you as you go through this difficult time. And I followed your story and how you both met. And, you know, we don't have to get too deep into it, but I just wanted to say that her legacy and her memory and her, like, she is so honored in this country.
That means a lot to me. I would tell you, so we're, about 8 weeks away from her passing, and it's actually gotten harder for me. Because I didn't realize I was in shock, and then that's worn off. But it's a tribute that so many people were concerned and cared about her. My superpower was I was telepathically connected to a genius who knew more about me than me and was able to consume so much information that I needed to know. We had a deal. I took a vow of illiteracy and she read all the books and told me what was in them, with sort of like a JPEG compression because we could, talk in shorthand almost. And so it really was a big loss to me. And, the stuff that we're talking about today, I'll probably say we a lot. We talk about being independent, but, humans aren't meant to be alone and to do things like to be off the grid or even to get into politics without losing your soul. You have to have another person that's watching out for your soul.
I hear that loud and clear. She comes across as such a genius, and you guys went to MIT together. And I know that there's no substitute for that, but we just all want you to know that if you ever need anything we're here for you. And I hear what you say because I couldn't do what I'm doing right now without my partner, Jacob.
Yeah.
And he is the other half of my brain. And he is the one that calls bullshit before even I can call bullshit. And it is really the only way to do politics with soul is to have that kind of partnership at home. And then to raise kids together too, and to talk about what's going on with them. And I think are you a grandfather now?
Yes,
too?
I am. I'm not allowed to disclose too much about my grandson.
Sure.
I did a Christmas picture once with a bunch of machine guns that got my whole family kind of involved for better or worse. And so the grandson doesn't go in the pictures, not yet. He has free choice later on. But, back to the spouse thing, when, I'm not that good at picking out before they're elected who will sell their soul and who will not. But I have noticed a pattern, and that is if the spouse is involved with the candidate's activities, there's a much better chance that they will not sell out because that's the person they don't want to let down.
Yep.
And if that person is like-minded uh, and engaged, then I've noticed a pattern. And then also when somebody gets elected, I asked, well, like Rhonda and myself, for instance, we would try to meet with the candidate and the spouse, and make it sort of a double date. And the spouse needs to know what the candidate is going to end up, the situations they'll be in. And one other quick thing, what's behind me is the farm that I live on, but this is the farm that Rhonda grew up on. This is her family farm. And I showed up here right behind me for our first date to pick her up. And she was driving a tractor
Wow.
with a hay bale on the back. Now, that was our first official date. I had been to this farm before that to help her with her science fair project.
Oh.
She was building an yttrium barium cupric oxide superconductor on this
Oh,
farm.
hell yes.
Yeah. And I don't know anything about chemistry, but I was like the champion science fair winner for the county, and I build robots, right? So it was like totally plausible that I had a legitimate purpose to come see her, even though I had no idea how to help her with her project. I didn't know enough about chemistry to be dangerous, other than how to make fireworks and, pyrotechnics.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
She was doing
Yes.
quantum mechanics and quantum
Yes.
chemistry.
Yes, she was doing quantum chemistry, and I was just blowing stuff up with potassium nitrate. I knew potassium nitrate and carbon. I knew how to mix those things, but I didn't know how to mix yttrium and barium and copper and oxides.
Wow. Wow. That's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, what a beautiful memory. And you're back at it. You've come back to work in Congress. I want people to understand how hard it is to do what you do every day. You are showing up at a time when America needs you so much, and at a time that I can't imagine how hard it is for you to show up every day. And what you are doing in how you've broken the duopoly, you have called out the collusion, you have stayed true to what is right and what is the shining northern light for this country. And I just have to say, I first found out about your work as it related to issues around overseas spending on wars. And the way that you put it, you say, look, America is best when we raise our flag first.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we raising other people's flags on the floor of Congress right now?
Yeah, I got in trouble for showing the video of everybody waving foreign flags on the floor of Congress. Like they were going to reduce my salary.
What?
Yeah, the sergeant at arms threatened my staff here in Kentucky, and I just doubled down though. I'm like, bring it on.
Yeah.
If you're gonna, try that. Yeah, try punishing me for outing what's actually going on here in this chamber, and let's see how that works out for you. And they backed down, thankfully. But you do need to double down, I think, a lot of times when you know you're doing the right thing and maybe the rules are wrong.
Mhm.
Massive noncompliance or righteous noncompliance, I would say, is in order a lot of times. And that's what I was exercising when I showed what they were doing on the floor of the House when that money passed to go to the other country and they were just waving the flags.
Yeah, it's unbelievable to me that and to go back to these rules, because I'm experiencing some of these really strange rules right now that are designed to keep the public from accessing the core principles of democracy, the things that make democracy a democracy,
Right.
is really being informed as to what's going on. So why do you think we've gotten to a place? Is it just so many layers of corruption that we're not able to access the real information of what's going on? Has the government just become so complacent in its embedded corruption that it just feels like it can get away with this and quash voices like yours and mine and RFK's?
Well, let me give you an example of a goofy rule that doesn't really help anybody. When I'm in Washington, D.C., if a lobbyist wants to take me to dinner, they're not allowed to pay for my dinner because, people believe if somebody's buying you food, that could bias you. But what they can do is hand me a $5,000 check, and I can put that in my campaign, and then I can pay for dinner with the campaign. So, I'm glad that rule is there to protect everybody. It really doesn't stop anything. But that's an example of a rule that makes people feel good, but there are always ways around it. The incumbents write the rules, and so there's going to be a bias to protect the incumbents. And the bias is against transparency. And so people say you're one of 435. What can you do? And I do feel that way some days. Like, what can I do as just one of 435? Well, what I've decided is the most important thing that I can do that's not getting done some days, and this is why I run for re-election, because I'm not sure who would do this, is I can impose some just harsh transparency. Like in the House of Representatives, if one person asks for a recorded vote, you have to give them the recorded vote. Like, you don't even need a second. So one person can force people to show up to work, like if they're passing it by unanimous consent. And there are days when that wouldn't be happening if I weren't there. But the reason I think transparency is important is, and Nicole, I don't know how your listeners are going to take this, but about 6 years ago, I decided to quit blaming my colleagues for what was going on, and I'm blaming the people who vote for them. Because, and I don't want to pick any particular name as somebody who's not good, but everybody got elected by people, and the people need to make better decisions. Now, where I give the people a pass is they're getting bad information or they're not getting enough information. And a lot of people are working hard. They get up, they go to work, they don't have time to watch TV. And even if you watch TV, it probably wouldn't be the right story. So what I'm trying to do to fix that problem we have, which is the wrong people are getting elected because of bad information, is I'm trying to give people better information. And they hate me for breathing air in Washington, D.C. when I do this, but that's okay.
But how else are we going to have an informed voter base? They need the information. And it's something that my voter base, our RFK's voter base, is learning as well, as to what degree we have been lied to by the popular press.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a learning experience for me. I was comfortably in the world of CNN and NBC and ABC, and that was where I got my news. And this is the current state of tens of millions of Americans, and so they continue to vote for candidates that are doing things that aren't in their best interest and aren't in the best interest of their children, aren't in the best interest of future generations. And I'm watching the brainwashing and manipulation that's happening right now is on a scale, it seems to be progressing as the sophistication of social media progresses.
Yeah.
Where the TikTok brainwashing is happening right now, it's really at a scale that you would compare to something utterly dystopian. You have these small clips, music, repetition, dance. You get people to move. The more you can get people to repeat after you, just physically as well, it programs your brain to be compliant to whatever the next message is. So
they have TikTok, but we have memes. I feel like we're winning the meme war.
Okay.
And as you mentioned disinformation, I want to bring up a meme I saw and expand on it the other day. The meme says, and I forget what the pictures are behind the meme, but it's somebody talking to somebody, and it says, the reason we have all this inflation are the greedy corporations. And then the other person says back, did the people who printed $10 trillion tell you that? And
Yeah.
Of course, those are the ones who are telling you it's the greedy corporations are the ones who caused the inflation by printing the money. I would just add to it, is it also the people who are protecting those corporations with by burdening their competition, with legislation or rules that aren't even passed by Congress? Is it also those people who are telling you that these are greedy corporations, that people are helping the corporations be monopolies through the laws? Yeah, it is. So that's just one piece of disinformation that's out there that I saw you go after. And I watched your interview. I think it was with Cuomo. Is that who you?
Oh,
Yeah. And
yeah, this past week.
yeah, he started with the, we've got inflation, and what about the price caps or the proposal of price caps? And I'm really glad you didn't waste any time calling that out. Like, price caps are not the answer on food. First, I mean, we got farmers that are barely struggling. I mean, the reason foreign countries are buying our land, and the reason you have this aggregation of small farms being sold into big corporations is because the little guys can't keep their heads above water currently the way the rules are written. And to add another rule, which is to say you can only charge this much for the product, is not going to fix that problem. What you need to do is change the rules. And the rules are written by, as I said, the incumbents. And in this case, the incumbents include the corporations who are there. I have taken PAC money. I'm not going to say my hands are clean. Now, the people who've given me PAC money probably regret giving it to me in a lot of cases because they don't get what they're paying for or what they think they're paying for. But
you're getting an honest candidate. That's what we all should be paying for.
I would hope so. But the people who give to people on the Ag Committee, the corporations who give people on the Ag Committee, well, those are corporations who have business in front of the Ag Committee. And they actually get a say in who gets on the Ag Committee. Like,
wow.
Yeah, the lobbyists on K Street, whatever the committee is, they have a disproportionate, it's almost like a beauty contest. And one of the judges is K Street, and one of the judges is the DCCC or the NRCC, the fundraising wing of the two parties. Another judge is the chairman of the committee. But the feedback there is all wired wrong. You get the wrong results. And so, for instance, on the food freedom stuff, we're starting there. I will have to give the chairman of this Ag Committee a shout out. He is listening to me about some of my legislation and starting to think about putting pilot programs for that in there. I'm just saying, give it a chance. Do a pilot program. See if what I'm telling you is right. And I've got their ear now, and so that's a good thing. But for the most part, the Ag Committee is going to listen to the big Ag interests, and that's what the bills are about. And it's because they not only do they give money to people on those committees, they get a say in who goes on those committees.
I can't believe that they have a say as to who goes on those committees. Like, they're not qualified, and clearly there's going to be such enormous bias. How is this allowed? If I, as a concerned citizen, filed suit, would that even make it anywhere? Because that is clear. It's clear corruption. It's just prima facie corruption.
So I've gone down this path. Like, okay, if you did this I just came from a meeting with a bunch of mayors here in my district. Okay. If the city council operated the way Congress did, and they sold this resource, like membership in a public entity based on how much money they were given, those city councilmen and the mayor would be perp walked, right, with handcuffs on, to the local jail or to the state prison, okay? But you can do this in Congress.
They just did that to the mayor of Oakland.
Really?
The FBI raided the home of the mayor of Oakland due to some relationship with a recycling company that she had allegedly taken campaign funds from, that she had given a city contract to. FBI raided her.
Yeah, so you never see the FBI like on K Street rating anybody or any congressman for anything like that. And here's what I found out when I questioned this. They said, well, the committees are outside of the official Congress, that committees are not mentioned, for instance, in the Constitution. So you can do what you want with the committees. So let me give you an example. We have like Guam, U.S. Virgin Islands, D.C., those territories have delegates in Congress who don't get to vote on the floor of the House, but they can vote in committees, and they can introduce legislation in committees, because committees are considered outside of the Constitution and not part of the main function of Congress. And so that's also how they get away with extorting your membership on these committees based on how much money you've given the party. I mean, this is a true, honest fact. Find anybody in Congress, I dare them right now, watching your podcast or listening to it, I challenge any of the 435 members to come on your show or any show and say what I'm saying is not true, which is you are expected to pay rent to the party, whether it's DCCC or the NRCC, to be on those committees. And the reason they claim they can rent those committees is none of that business is official until it comes to the floor of the House and it gets voted on the floor of the House.
Was this something that's been tried yet in court? I mean, to say that the committees sit outside of the Constitution, and therefore members of Congress that sit on those committees can sit outside of the bounds of the Constitution, that doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, this would not pass like a basic legal analysis.
I mean, the equivalent of that in a city council meeting would be having a quorum and meeting and deciding what business you're going to do before you go have the real meeting. And that violates Open Records Act and all those other things you have in the various states. So you're not allowed. I was in county government. We were not allowed to have a quorum anywhere else and talk about county business as officials unless it was in front of the people. But again, we violate that rule all the time in Congress. So to your question, Nicole, I'm not an attorney, but I have sued Nancy Pelosi with an attorney's help. And so what I've come to understand is you have to have standing. You have to show that you were harmed by this situation.
If you're a farmer, though, so say we got a coalition of farmers together, farmers are actively being harmed by this. Small family farmers are actively being harmed by this every single day. You've seen it. I've seen it across the country. They are sucking the life out of the small, mid-sized farmer. And this is for every single crop literally under the sun, as well as meat production. And if we had a coalition of farmers, they would, I would imagine, absolutely qualify for standing.
Well, here's how they get around that. And not just to pick on the Ag Committee, I'm on the Rules Committee. So the Farm Bill would come from the Ag Committee and go to the Rules Committee that I sit on. And then it goes to the floor of the House. And the court would say, well, you don't really have standing because ultimately these people in the Ag Committee and the Rules Committee did their thing. But ultimately it was voted on only by the elected officials. And there was a public debate and it was done openly. Now, you and I know the cake was baked by the time it got there, but there was an official vote. Now, the people who might have standing would be members of Congress. So there are 535 people. Let's say you didn't get the committee you wanted, and so then you felt like you didn't have as big of a voice, and so you would try to sue based on that. There's two problems with that. At least two problems, maybe more. One is who in the system is going to bring that case, because you're in there playing the game, and you'll get no committees if you start trying to do that kind of stuff, right? You'll be on no committees, and they'll say, see, that's what you get for trying to do that. The other is the courts, and this I have some respect for. The courts try not to tell Congress what to do, even when Congress is doing things that are unconstitutional. Because there is a separation of, and it is somewhat healthy to have that separation, and our founders knew it. So for instance, Nicole, as long as I go on the floor of the House, if I want to slander you and just tell outright lies about you, I can do that, and that you have no recourse in the courts, because there's something called the speech or debate clause in our Constitution. And the founders put it there because what they saw was the king or private entities would quash debate in Parliament by just tying down the members of the legislature in a courtroom. So this is, this is something I do respect, is keeping that separation so that internal affairs of Congress aren't really litigated in the courts. And ultimately, you could say, look, there are 435 of you propagating this broken system, and ultimately the way to fix it is for Thomas Massie to tell you what they're doing, and then you go get at least 218 new ones that'll fix it.
Oh my goodness. Well, we have our work cut out for us then, getting 218 more Thomas Massies.
Hold on, wait. I know I just made the odds sound like really long, but let me tell you, the thing that I say in town halls, and the thing that I think internally that keeps me from losing hope, is if you look at the Republican Party in Congress, let's say there are 220 of us. I think there's 220 some of us. If there's 220, I think there are 30 who wake up every day and it's like Groundhog Day. They are programmed to do the wrong thing, even if the right thing would get them more votes and more money from the lobbyists, they're still going to do the wrong thing, okay? It's just in their genetics. So there are 30 who will do the wrong thing when the right thing suits everybody. There are 30 who go and they're full of piss and vinegar, and they are like, they really believe what they campaigned on, and they're trying to do the right thing. Now, some of those are in the Freedom Caucus, some are outside of the Freedom Caucus. And not everybody in the Freedom Caucus is among those 30. Like, I don't want the Freedom Caucus to get mad at me, but just because you're in the Freedom Caucus doesn't mean you've got a spine and you will stand up and do the right thing every day, okay? And just because you're not doesn't mean you won't. But let's say there's 30 in each camp. What's that leave? 220 minus 30 minus 30, 160. What are the other 160 doing? They are following whichever tribe wins.
Oh, interesting.
Because their algorithm, and I can't fault them for this, is, well, I don't write the rules. I got to play the game. I'm trying to help 750,000 people back in my district. So I am obligated to play the game. I got to figure out who's most likely to win speaker. I'm trying to get a good committee. I want to be a subcommittee chairman. The only way you do that is by being on the winning side. And so 160 are sitting there trying to figure out who's going to win that day. And once the 30 that win, they line up like good soldiers and they follow them. So here's what gives me hope. Now, that may seem completely broken, but let's say we go the 30 who wake up and do the right thing. Let's say you give us 20 more. And I know I'm talking about the Republican Party. Same thing applies to the Democrat Party, okay? Same thing's going on over there. So just transpose all what I'm saying from R to D. Let's say we get 50 good Republicans instead of 30. We could, and their numbers go from 30 to 15. We could get somebody elected to speaker who's not uniparty, who actually wants to get up and do the right thing, who, in spite of what all the PAC money says, they care about this country enough to know that even if it's their last term as speaker, they're going to do the right thing. Well, and then when they become speaker, those 160 will do whatever the good speaker wants. Like, they're programmed. They're not rebels.
That is a pretty efficient model, I won't lie. So let's unpack that, because, there's 51% of Americans are now registered independents. There's a lot of power now in the independent base across this country, and they're not satisfied with either the Democratic Central Party line or the Republican Central Party line. And they're looking for where to put their energy in each election. And if it makes sense to point that 51% and say, look, this is about America, fixing America, doing what's right for this country, making sure people who are representing us have a backbone and a spine. And if we point them all towards those 20 individuals in those key races that are going to do the right thing,
right?
That seems like, and from my point as being a donor, great great economics in terms of how we try to reframe this in our mind. And it actually speaks to this larger trend that's happening, which is that all of these really smart people are looking to those that identify as Republican on tickets to lead the way out of this uniparty mess.
Mhm.
And people you wouldn't expect to be Republicans, lifelong Democrats, kind of now looking over at Vivek and saying to themselves, I kind of like that guy. All of these libertarians and independents that look at you. I mean, I saw pictures of you at the Libertarian convention, and you were like, I mean, the equivalent of Oprah at the DNC. I mean, people were so excited. They were lining up around the corner to see you and take a picture with you. And it was really cool to see. And so,
And I'm not even registered libertarian, but they let me in there.
but what you represent is what us independents and libertarians, I'm just going to speak for the libertarians because I love them so much, but what you represent to the majority of Americans is somebody with a backbone. And it doesn't matter if you're registered Republican or Democrat. I've looked within the Democratic Party. I looked at Dean Phillips and I was like, that guy is interesting. But what you represent, people don't look at you and think Republican. People look at you and think Thomas Massie, the guy who's wearing the debt clock on his.
I built it too. Yeah.
And built it and engineered it. So, look, I think that is, I'm really happy you shared that with me just now, because people feel so hopeless that there aren't 218 other Thomas Massies in Congress, and they don't know where to put their effort and their time. And certainly that's been my case as a donor, looking at the landscape and trying to find the right analysis. But once you go independent, which so many Americans have, you just are blind to whatever anyone's label is.
Yeah.
And you're looking at who's actually the real deal. And that's the blessing. I'd say that's been a blessing of this election cycle, is seeing that number go up by almost 10 points, right?
So I have an admission to make. By the way, I have, just for practical reasons, I've been registered Republican since I was 18 because I've been in a state where it's a closed primary. And so and in a county, this county here behind you has voted Republican since the Civil War. So all of the people in our local courthouse, who, by the way, have more influence on your lives than Congress does, thankfully, but all the people in the local courthouse are Republicans, so you have to vote in a primary. But when I ran for my first political office, which was county judge executive, and I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a judge, but you're basically the mayor of the county. That's the position I was running for. I have all these independent and libertarian friends, and I brought them voter registration cards, and I begged and pleaded and got a lot of them to register Republican. And I know I'm going to hell for that. Or if I was already going to hell, my flame is burning hotter because I registered independence. I knew I was doing the wrong thing, but it was for a good reason.
Well, yeah, and I think at the local level, if that's necessary to get the quorum that is needed to accomplish certain things, it makes sense. For sure, it makes sense. But the incredible disillusionment in our country right now, the thing you talk about, like waking up every day and getting your teeth knocked out because you're trying to do the right thing against such incredible odds. That is the feeling we all feel today, is getting up, putting our hope behind someone and getting our teeth knocked out. And that's been, we're still reeling from that a week after RFK making the decision to suspend his campaign. Our campaign is we have millions of people across the country that feel so sad right now. But what I'm trying to bring is that optimism. I'm trying to say, look, we are still on 40 ballots across the United States. And what we've done is we have found a partnership that is the right partnership for right now. It's a coalition where we get to be our own group. We're not being absorbed into Trump's camp by any measure. We are our own people representing issues that matter so much to us. The issues of chronic disease and farming are like two of the top big ones, addressing the debt. Big one. And we are looking at this with great optimism. And I think that we can bring people along this bigger goal of it's not necessarily we have to win everything. We just have to know how everything works enough to use our energy, to use our emotional resources and point it in the right direction.
Yeah, and I know some people are disappointed, but let me tell you why I'm excited about it. In the coalition that's formed. By the way, you're still on the ballot in Kentucky. Our Secretary of State just confirmed. So, and we're pretty sure Trump's going to win Kentucky.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
which is the point of the coalition.
Right.
We would only stay on the ballots in which there's a sure thing Trump's going to win. And for like the disillusioned Democrats to just get them out to vote.
Right.
Come vote for us. We want to be there for them.
Well, and then I think it also, in some states, depending on how the rules are written, increases the chances that somebody can run as independent or get on the ballot easier. But to the point of the people who are disillusioned, if you think about this, where Trump messed up in his first term was he picked some bad help. I mean, John Bolton, come on, what were you thinking? Okay. So, when I heard that you guys are helping with the transition team, and that means picking the people, and staff is policy. We say this in Congress, right? Like, staff is policy. I joke that I don't want all the same ideology in my office because you need to have arguments inside the office. So half of my people are Ron Paul people and the other half are Rand Paul people, and they argue all the time. So we're very diverse ideologically in my office. But
yeah, that's a funny vision.
Yeah, but in Trump's administration, it's going to be so critical. If he picks John Bolton's, you're gonna get warmed over neocon, policy. But if he picks, I don't want to pick for him, but there are lots of good picks out there for different things.
There really are. That's the thing that I think I'm so excited about is broadening the spectrum of who can both bring that qualified voice, but is going to be fresh and not conflicted.
Right.
And there are, like, even if you just look at the health arena, what falls under HHS, I mean, there are brilliant scientists out there, economists, public health specialists who are ready to go and take this role and run with it. And these are, across all of the health agencies, they're ready to go. And military as well. I mean, Tulsi has incredible experience now, having served in our military, served in our Congress, and she's gotten to know so many fantastic people, and she's done it from a sense of her own self-discovery as well, which I think that lived experience is what makes people great in these roles.
Yeah, I love Tulsi Gabbard. She's great, and we text back and forth. Since she's left Congress, we've stayed in touch, and I'm very thankful for her friendship. Just let me talk about the current ag secretary, for instance.
Let's talk about that, because I'd love you to do that.
Oh, well, I'm available. Would it be interesting to have an ag secretary who's butchered a chicken and grafted a fruit tree and castrated a steer, like a bull to be a steer?
And who knows what an abattoir is?
Yes, your local abattoir, and cares about them. Right?
Yes.
And cares about them and knows the plight that small farmers are going through, not just corporate farmers. But let me talk about the current ag secretary, because this is the epitome of what is wrong, whether you have Republicans or Democrats in there. Okay, it's Vilsack. Okay, that he was a crony when he got in there under Obama. Okay, but Trump was president for 4 years. So what did Vilsack do for 4 years?
He went back and lined his pockets.
He lied. Oh, how did you know? How did you guess?
Oh, wild guess.
So he became, there's something called the checkoff program. They're promoting products and that they're helping farmers. And it's called a checkoff program because it used to be voluntary, right? The farmer could decide, okay, do I want to give $1 of the money that I made from selling my steer at the auction house? Do I want to give $1 of that to help promote these products? Well, the Congress came in and said, we're going to force you to give that dollars. They shouldn't call it a checkoff program. The box is already checked and you can't uncheck the box. So they're taking money from farmers. It's a government program, but you can't do a FOIA on it. It's like one of these nasty combinations of government and private industry. And they pay their executives. In Vilsack's case, he became the head of this after overseeing it, right? And then he becomes the head of it and draws $1 million a year salary for 4 years. And then Biden becomes president. And guess what? Oh, we got him. He's collected his millions off the backs of dairy farmers who are going bankrupt. Every week, there's another dairy farm goes out of business.
Goes out of business. Yep.
And
yeah, we've lost so many of them in California. There's less than, I think, there's really less than 10% of what was here just 20 years ago.
Oh yeah, it's scary. And so now Vilsack is in charge of this again. Like, that is what's wrong with these appointments. And so that's why I'm glad Trump's got RFK's help and your help on this transition team, because I don't think you guys would pick a crony, or recommend.
I mean, I have reasons I don't like Vilsack, and it comes from my work in social justice and working with Black farmers in America. But he treated Shirley Sherrod, who is the first Black woman to lead the state. She was in the state of Georgia at the USDA. Lovely woman. Her husband was Charles Sherrod, who led the civil rights movement in Albany, Georgia. Incredible people. And she grew up in rural Georgia. And this was during the Obama administration. She got her appointment. Things were going well until a piece of misinformation about her spread through the news. At the time, it was this was something Brett Bart, when he was still a blogger. Brett Bart, before Brett Bart became like a formalized news vehicle, had taken one of her speeches and doctored it. And anyways, but rather than being sensible about it, Vilsack just immediately just cut her out.
Right.
There was no due process. There was no investigation. I mean, she was treated in such a petty way because they were just trying to protect their interests, and they couldn't handle the pressure, and they couldn't handle the media heat. And so, I mean, this guy has no backbone in my mind.
Yeah.
He really is just a puppet of the institution. And this was when I started to actually doubt Obama as well. It was like, how are you going to treat Shirley Sherrod that way without any due process? Because he supported, actually, I think his office even pressured Tom Vilsack to do it. But this is not how we ought to be running our government. If we were so reactionary about things like, bloggers leaking stuff that might or may not be true, I mean, no wonder we're in the chaos we are today here in the United States. Like, people need to have a backbone. People need to have some moral direction, and people need to be in their jobs for more reasons than their social connections.
Yeah. As soon as it cost them an ounce of political capital, they just cut the strings and wouldn't spend any of their own political capital doing the right thing. But what I've found, I've put all of my political capital, like I've gone all in more than once and put all the chips on the table and put my faith in the people that if they see, like, when I opposed the CARES Act and I said, this is cronyism on steroids, like 95% of this money is going to end up in Wall Street and in the banks. And you guys are getting $1,200 checks. That's the cheese in the trap. And I said, that's what's going on. And I put all my chips in, and it worked out for me, even though I thought I would lose everything. But it keeps, I don't know, someday I'll put all the chips in and it won't work, I guess.
Your legacy, Thomas Massie, is literally going to be the legacy of saving America from the worst of itself. And it's not going to be, I mean, Trump is Trump, but he's not the guy living off grid who is laser focus on the issues as you are, who has shown the world that you can live sustainably, that you can live with dignity, and that the American public freaking loves it. I mean, you are loved with a kind of purity by those who know you or know your work and follow your work that I have never seen before. I mean, Obama was like a sparkling, figure, but I couldn't tell you anything about him other than he can shoot hoops pretty good, right? But like with you, like I know about your solar panel installations. I know about your pizza oven. I know about how you built your house. I mean, you really show people how to live this version of the American dream, which is sustainable, healthy, close to the land and earth, connected, a scientist. I mean, I could go on and on and on.
Well,
But before we do that, let's talk about the debt. What is it right now?
well, just to follow
Okay.
up very quickly. I
Yeah.
want to tell you what I did this morning that
Okay.
got me back to reality. So I went to a vocational school and met with kids, and it's a high school, but they're doing computer science. Like vocational learning is different. They're learning how to be nurses in high school. Okay. And then I met with 6 of my mayors in a group about what we need to help the local area. But before I did all that, my grandson stayed at my house, and I heard his little feet. He knocked on my door and
Oh.
came in and brought me my Crocs and tried to get me to put them on. And I knew what he wanted. We went out and picked a peach, and he ate a peach off the tree. And so that's what recharges my battery, not that I got some subcommittee gavel that, is going to let me call a hearing or something.
I
So
hear
that's
you
what
on
keeps,
that.
I know that's what keeps me going, is worrying about the next generation. So the debt, okay, that's a good segue, I think, into your second question, which is, what about the debt? I don't, like, everybody in Congress, there's 435, and people ask me, does anybody else there care about the debt? And I'm like, well, I think everybody cares. It's just, what is the degree of caring or the degree of understanding? And again, this goes back on the voters. If people get elected promising free stuff and they come up here and they borrow the money to deliver it, or if they send the money overseas and just put it on the tab and they get reelected, I'm going to blame the voters, at least some, for this, right? I don't
Yep.
know anybody in Congress who lost their reelection because they spent too much money. I've not met one yet. Now,
That should be the first grounds. I mean, when
yes,
I'm looking at CEOs in my portfolio company and they're spending wildly, it's somewhere between we got to fire them or we got to sue them, right? I mean, look at Elizabeth Holmes. Like, she's sitting in prison for embezzling, for misappropriating
yeah.
investor funds.
Well,
Because
that's
she
what
didn't
Congress
deliver.
does as a matter of habit, is misappropriate funds.
Yeah.
But again, part of that's on the voter, but they keep getting reelected. And so Nicole, though, I think we are approaching that point where what the politicians have done is coming home to roost, and people are seeing it in inflation.
Yeah.
Okay. And those politicians are trying to blame everything except themselves. And they are the ones, Republican and Democrat. I'm calling them both out. I'm calling out Mike Johnson right here. Mike Johnson, do not pass an omnibus. Do not pass a CR that doesn't cut spending. You are part of the problem, Mike Johnson. You are a Republican, and you are the problem, sir. I hope you listen to this podcast. And
We'll make sure he hears it.
you cannot blame Nancy Pelosi or Hakeem Jeffries for what you are about to do, which is to basically mortgage our children's future. So shame on you, Mike Johnson. Out. I think I've been tough enough on the Republican there, but this is the problem. And I think the inflation is kicking in and people are
Yeah.
starting to see it. Now the Fed, I saw they're like the arsonist and the firefighter. Okay, they cause the problem and then they come in. You've probably had people like this in your life, right?
Unfortunately.
They create the drama and then they show up as if they are going to solve this problem, but they are the ones who cause the problem. That is the Fed. This is the dramatic person in your life who causes all the problems, then tells you they can fix them. Everybody's got one. For America, it's the Fed. They cause inflation to go up. They were actually just the facilitator. Congress did that by spending the money, but we can't do that without the Fed. So the Fed was like our unindicted co-conspirator in this. And I'm indicting them now. So they cause inflation. They say we're going to fix inflation by raising interest rates. So they raise interest rates. People can't afford housing now. You can't, like a house, the price of a house doubles when the interest rate goes up, by a factor of 2 or 3, which it has. And now they're claiming they're going to lower interest rates and things will, because they got inflation under control. I don't think they're really that much in control of interest rates at this point. Like if they said they were going to lower interest rates 2%, they can't do it because nobody is going to buy our debt at those rates. And,
Yeah.
and they're starting to lose control. Now they can bring it down half a point or a point. They've got buyers of last resort because they do so many favors for these big banks. The big banks will step in and buy some of this when the sovereign debt, the countries who buy our debt typically buy our debt don't do it because the banks have an interest in keeping the music going for the music chairs for a little bit longer. But I think we're headed for bad news, and I think people are waking up because they're seeing it in the grocery store and in their mortgages.
Well, I mean, look at what's happening to banks. I mean, we went through the Silicon Valley bank run, and JP Morgan came in and swooped up that book of business, and then you had all of these other regional banks going out of business one by one, and then you got JP Morgan. So, and it feels like JP Morgan at this point is just another arm of the federal government in many ways, and they're so enormous now because they've had to take this all on. But at some point, are their books going to be able to handle the amount of debt and potential for a bank run? I mean, if JP Morgan had a bank, it's game over for pretty much the American public because so much of the American public's banking now is forced to be funneled through JP Morgan.
Yeah, what I find amusing is they say the Fed has to exist because you want an independent agency deciding these things. And you wouldn't want Congress, for instance, doing their Article 1, Section 8 job of coining money and setting the value thereof. Like, that's our job, but we farmed it out for independence. The Fed is not independent. They are talking to JP Morgan every day.
Every day.
They're talking to Treasury every day. And Treasury is a function of the executive branch and of the government. Every second, they are coordinating every move with the banks. They are not independent, folks. So I find that hilarious as one of the arguments.
And what a signal that sends, though, that regional banks can't hold themselves up anymore based on the current credit and debt businesses. They cannot sustain. So if there was, for me, that's been the biggest indication that we are definitely progressing towards what they call us going off the rails with the debt right now.
Right.
Our entire financial infrastructure just it's like right there.
Yeah, let me tell you, when they swooped in and saved that bank there in Silicon Valley, I thought, well, they'll call us back to Congress and we'll vote on something because I saw this happen before, bank bailouts. No, we got a Sunday Zoom call, and Treasury and the Fed and FDIC, those three people told us what they were going to do. This was like on a Sunday, and they didn't ask our permission like in the past. And I guess it turns out that when Congress did it last time, they just basically gave these organizations a blank check, or whether the FDIC, Treasury, and Fed has a blank check or not. If they do a Zoom call and they tell Congress what they're doing and Congress doesn't do something that the next Monday, then they get away with it. And now that is what is accepted as what's going to happen. So they just pulled all of that off without an elected body doing anything.
I mean, I can't imagine how stressful it must be to be in Congress right now and caring about the debt and trying to get ahead of this stuff. And, we're coming up on time, but the last story I wanted to ask you about was during the pandemic, you drove to D.C.
Yes.
to try to stop the passage of the CARES Act.
Yes. I watched, I think it was it was Trump's cabinet. Okay, some of the bad people, right? They were assembled and they did a news conference. I was waiting for us to go back to DC and save the country, right? But they did a news conference and they said, well, we're going to do a $2 trillion package, but it's more like $6 trillion because we're going to give the Fed 400,000 that they can loan out at a 10-to-1 ratio. And I'm watching this. I'm like, what? What is it? They lost their mind? And then I'm waiting for the phone call for Congress to come back and do this. And instead we get an email that says, just stay at your house. We're going to do all this by unanimous consent. And I called the two staffers who were most important to me that have worked for me since the beginning of me being in Congress. And I said, I'm thinking about going to DC and we're all going to lose our jobs. But I said, so I want to let you know before I cause for us all to be unemployed. And I said, how do you feel about it? And they said, we don't want to work for you if you don't get in the car and drive to DC.
Oh,
and I was
these people are amazing.
I've got the right people working for me. This is what I was saying in the beginning. Trump needs these people surrounding him, people like I have. So I got in the car and I drove to DC, and there were airplanes with just two people on them, two passengers. They were both congressmen from California. Like, they had shut down basically everything. This was during the 15 days to slow the spread. And it was so nasty. That was like the toughest day. It was a series of days I've ever had in Congress. People would come up to me and say, you know, my wife and I live with our parents, and you're going to cause me to get COVID and bring it home to them, and they will die, and the blood is going to be on your hands. And I was getting these lectures from Republicans. And I'm thinking, wait, you just went to Kroger's yesterday and somebody bagged your groceries and brought them out to your car. That kid probably lives with his parents. And what's going to happen there? Like, it was all about me, me, me. And so at some point I realized I couldn't stop it. There was so much against me. So the default I decided on was forcing them to come to Congress and trying to force the vote. And, you know, I caught all kinds of hell for that. But and the reason I did it is I didn't want to be sitting on the porch back here 10 years from now, 20 years from now, in a dystopian future where inflation was rampant and everything, and to know that instead of getting in my car and going to DC, like I had a margarita, like the guilt would have killed me. So that's why I got in my car. I don't want you to think I'm brave or anything. I just don't want to regret being in a position where I could have done something and not trying. Because a lot of times I know I'm going to lose. I know people are going to kick my teeth in. I know both parties are going to like stomp on me. But here's the thing, like, I love going back to Congress now. By the way, I've said enough stuff on your show. I'm going to get some texts from my colleagues when they see this. There's some of them wondering, am I in the good 30, the bad 30, or the 160 who follow? Like,
good. I want them to ask.
Yeah, they need to be thinking about that. I know I'm going to get text from Mike Johnson's staff, you know, hey, can you back off? That wasn't really nice. We're in an election cycle. Go after Democrats. Don't pick on our own party.
But you were right. I mean, here's the thing. If you told this story at the beginning of 2022, you would get hell for it. But it's 2024. We're going on to, 2025 soon. And we have all of the evidence that shows that these lockdowns, mask mandates, the fact that COVID wasn't really lethal for your age group or the common age group within Congress, and that it doesn't transmit the way we think it transmits, and that the vaccine didn't stop transmission. I mean, now we have all of this information, which we didn't back then. So I think this is a really important message, because what you did, you were so right in that instinct. And because of that passing, we have started this cascading, unforgivable inflation and debt, and we can't get out of it. And it did so many other harms to the psychology of people, the handouts, how they were managed, where that money went. I mean, it's really unconscionable to now know what we know about the pandemic and look back at that time and to see that there was just like one or two people like who decided to get themselves to Congress to speak up.
Here's the funny thing, or the fun thing. Like, once you turn out to be right, they don't convene Congress and pass a resolution saying you were right, right? Like, they will never There will be no written acknowledgement. There will be no recorded verbal acknowledgement that I was right? Nobody's going to go to the floor of the House and say Thomas Massie was right in a speech, okay? But they all have to look at me. And now they have to look at my debt clock. And when they're looking at me, they know. They know either they were complicit in doing the wrong thing, or they know they should have been acting with me and they did not do it. And I've talked to some of the spouses of these people, and they're like, "I was so mad when my husband wasn't there with you." Like, I'm not going to call out their names, but one person who I really like, because he's done a lot to uncover the censorship in the Judiciary Committee, Jim Jordan. He was one of the people trying to talk me out of calling for the vote, not because he thought what I was doing was wrong, but he was worried that I would get crushed. Like, he thought I was also committing political suicide. So he called me like 6 times in one day to try to get me not to jump in front of the freight train. And then he called me at midnight, and I always take his call. He's such a good friend. So I felt like I was getting abused a little bit because he knew I would always take his call. So I take his call. It's midnight.
He's trying to save his friend.
Yeah, he's trying to save me, and I'm picking up the phone. And I said, "Jim, give up. There's only one person on this planet can change my mind. Only one person." And he said, "Who's that?" And I said, "It's my wife." And he said, "What's Rhonda's phone number?"
Like, I'm sure Rhonda was like, "No, thank you."
Yeah, right. Yeah, good luck, Jim. You think you can't change my mind? Try changing her mind.
Well, oh my God. Ending on that, I mean, like, bless you, bless your family, everything you are. I just can't tell you how much, I mean, I'm like on the edge of tears thinking about Rhonda, and I just want you to know one more time that we are grateful to you. You are a national treasure. Your wife is a national treasure. And we have your family in our hearts right now. And thank you for what you do. And, anybody listening to this, it's the truth. This shouldn't be offensive. And maybe there won't be an acknowledgement for what you've done from Congress, but you will have it from all of us here in the United States that understand it. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And thanks for the tribute to my wife. I would not have gotten through what I've done in the last 12 years. My soul would not be intact if not for her, and without being able to come back to the farm that she grew up on, that we lived on. And she taught me things about farming too, when I was kind of an idiot starting out 20 years ago. So thanks for the tribute to her. And thanks for what you guys are doing. Thanks for recognizing that we need to more pharma with an F, not with a PH.
Hell yeah.
And I love that part about you. This is a part of the untapped energy in this country.
Yes.
People don't know who can I vote for that's going to fix these problems, like all these health problems that we have because we've sold our souls to corporations and the little farmers can't compete. So that's one thing I love about you, is you've been on top of that from the beginning.
Yeah, well, we're going to get there. And I think that's the best acknowledgement, is to see this stuff come to life, literally.
Yeah.
Let's bring America back to life.
Let's do it.
All right. Well, take care.
Thank you.
Mr. Massie, thank you so much.
See you, Nicole.